there, children. Gandalf the Graphing Wizard here talking to you about standard form. Now here's a question. What do the hobbits call Gandalf when he's gotta go to the bathroom? The White Wizard!
Okay, first we're going to talk about Xintercept. That's the point x comma 0 where a line crosses the x-axis. To find the Xintercept, we plug in 0 for y and solve for x. So for our example, we have 2x plus 3y is equal to 6, and we're going to find the Xintercept, which says in order to find the Xintercept, we plug in 0 for y and solve for x. So here, instead of y, we're going to put 0, and now we're going to solve for x. So what do I do here? Well, I'm going to multiply first the 3 times the 0, and I get 0. Now what's 2x plus 0? That's just 2x. Now how do I solve for x? How do I get x by itself? Well, I need to get rid of this 2, right? I need to move this 2 over here. Since it's 2 times x, I do the opposite, the inverse. I divide both sides by 2. That way these cancel out, and I get x is equal to 3. It says the Xintercept is the point x comma 0. What did I get for my x? 3. So the Xintercept here would be 3 comma 0. Now if you want to see what that looks like on a graph, here's our graph. And at 3 comma 0, that's where our Xintercept is. That's where the graph of this equation crosses through the x-axis. Now the y-intercept is the point 0 comma y where a line crosses the y-axis. To find the y-intercept, we do the opposite. We plug in 0 for x and solve for y. So here we have our equation again. If we want the y-intercept this time, what we're going to do is we're going to plug in 0 for x and solve for y. So let's do that. What's 2 times 0? That's 0. What's 0 plus 3y? That's just 3y. And now how do I get y by itself? I need to get rid of this 3. So how do I do that? Well, it's 3 times y, so I do the opposite. Divide both sides by 3. That way these cancel out, and I get y is equal to 2. Now again, you don't write this as your answer. This is a line. Y equals 2, that's a line. We'll get to that later. We want the point 0 comma y. So this is going to be 0 comma 2 is going to be your y-intercept, and that's where your graph crosses through the y-axis at 0 comma 2. Now, vertical lines. It's the set of all points straight up and down for a given x value. It's parallel to the y-axis and has an undefined slope and is in the form x is equal to a number. So anytime you see x equals a number, that is the equation of a vertical line. So you go over to that x value, and please don't go over to that x value and put a point. Everybody does that. Everybody says, oh, x is equal to 7. So I go over to 7, I put a point. No, it's everywhere where x is equal to 7. Here, 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 here. This is 7 comma 0. This is 7 comma 1, 7 comma 2, 7 comma 3. So you need everywhere where x is equal to 7. Same thing here. This is everywhere where x is equal to negative 8. Every point that has a x coordinate of negative 8. Here, this is every point that has an x coordinate of 0. Now, a horizontal line is the set of all points left and right for a given y value. It's parallel to the x-axis and has a slope of 0. It's in the form y equals a number. So anytime you see y equals a number, that's a horizontal line. That's every point that has a y value, in this case, of 7. This is every point that has a y value of negative 8. Same thing here. Every point that has a y value of 0. Note that the vertical line had an undefined slope and a horizontal line has a 0 slope. We talked about that in the first lesson. Now let's review slope-intercept form. That's y equals mx plus b, where x is your independent variable, y is your dependent variable, m is your slope, and b is your y-intercept. In point slope form, we have y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times the quantity x minus x sub 1. This time, instead of giving us a y-intercept, we're given a point on the line instead. So here, m represents your slope, x represents your independent variable, y represents your dependent variable. X sub 1 comma y sub 1 is going to be a point on the line. Now we're going to talk about standard form. Standard form is ax plus by is equal to c. You don't readily get your slope or your y-intercept like you did in slope-intercept form. If you look at slope-intercept form, you can tell exactly what your slope and your y-intercept are. Here, you got to do a little work. Your slope is going to be negative a over b. So you take whatever the a value is, put it over whatever b value that is, and then make it the opposite sign. For your y-intercept, it's equal to c over b. So you take whatever your c value is, put it over your b value, and that's your y-intercept. Note a couple things here. A, b, and c are going to be real real numbers, they're usually integers. So we don't like having fractions or decimals in standard form. A and B are not both 0. If A or B are both 0, you don't even have an equation anymore. And then A is positive. Usually teachers make you have A be positive. So what you do, if you get a negative A, just multiply everything by -1.
What does Sam call Pippin when he's happy? Mary! It's example time.
Example 1 says find the x and y intercepts of the graphs of each equation. Then graph each equation. So here we want to find the x and y intercepts first. So let's find our x-intercept. Remember, to find the x-intercept, you plug in 0 for y and solve for x. So we're going to take our equation right here. We're going to plug in 0 for y. And now we're going to solve for x. What's negative 32 times 0? That's 0. And what's 4x minus 0? That's 4x. Now, how do I get x by itself, right? We're solving for x. So to get x by itself, it's 4 times x. I do the opposite, the inverse. I divide both sides by 4. That way these cancel out. I get x is equal to 8. Now you don't leave this as your answer. You want the x-intercept, which is x comma 0. 8 comma 0 is going to be your x-intercept. So now we go over the graph. We go over 8, up or down 0. That's your x-intercept. Next, we have to find the y-intercept. So to find the y-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for x this time and solve for y. So here is our original function. We're going to plug in 0 for x. And now what's 4 times 0? That's 0. What's 0 minus 32y? Negative 32y. Now all we have to do to get y by itself, because we're solving for y, is we need to get rid of this negative 32. Since it's negative 32 times y, I do the opposite, the inverse. I divide both sides by negative 32. That way these cancel each other out, and I get y is equal to, what's 32 divided by negative 32? That's negative 1. Now this is not your y-intercept. You don't write y equals negative 1. The y-intercept is a point. What point is that? Well, remember, it's 0 comma y. In this case, it would be 0 comma negative 1. That's going to be your y-intercept. So we go over to the graph, go over 0 on our x-axis, down negative 1. On our y-axis, put a point. Now that is going to be your y-intercept. And if we want to then graph the equation, we have 2 points. And all you need to form a line is 2 points. You draw a line through those 2 points, and we have successfully graphed 4x minus 32y equals 32.
Why shouldn't you make Gimli mad? 'Cause he has a short temper! You try.
Okay, so we're going to start here. First, we want to find our x-intercept. How do we find the x-intercept? We plug in 0 for y, and we solve for x. Now we take our original equation, and we're going to plug in 0 for y. What's 2 times 0? That's going to give you 0. Now what's negative x minus 0? That's just still negative x. Now I got to get x by itself, since it's the same thing as negative 1 times x. To get rid of that negative 1, I do the opposite, the inverse. I divide by negative 1. These cancel each other out, and negative 3 divided by negative 1 gives you positive 3. Now remember, don't leave this as your answer. This is a vertical line. We want a point, the x-intercept, x comma 0. So in this case, it would be 3 comma 0. That's going to be your x-intercept. So we go over to 3 on our x-axis, up or down 0, so just right here, and we put a point. That is your x-intercept. Now let's find the y-intercept. So remember, to find the y-intercept, we plug in 0 for x and solve for y. So we take our original equation, we're going to plug in 0 for x. So what's negative 1 times 0? That's 0. And what's 0 minus 2y? That's negative 2y. Now to get y all by itself, this is negative 2 times y, so I do the opposite, the inverse. I divide both sides by negative 2. That way these cancel each other out, and I get y is equal to positive 1.5, or positive 3/2. So my y-intercept, remember, don't write your answer like this. This is the equation of a horizontal line. We want a point, the y-intercept, which is 0 comma y. So in this case, that would be 0 comma 1.5. Now we go over to our y-axis, and we go up to 1.5, so that'll be 1.5 on our y-axis, and that is going to be where your y-intercept is. Now it says then graph the equation. So in order to graph this, since we have our 2 intercepts, those are 2 points on the line. So we just draw a line going through those 2 points, and we have successfully graphed our equation right here. Part B, doing the same thing. What we want to do, first, find our x-intercept. How do we find the x-intercept? That's plug in 0 for y and solve for x. So we take our original equation, we're going to plug in 0 for y, and we're going to solve for x. So what's negative 5 times 0? That's 0. And what's 3x minus 0? That is 3x. Now to get x all by itself, I got to get rid of this 3, move it to the other side. Since it's 3 times x, I do the opposite, the inverse. I divide both sides by 3. That way these cancel out, and over here I get x is equal to negative 20 thirds, or negative 6 and 2 2/3. But again, you don't want to leave your answer like this because this is the equation of a vertical line. We're looking for the x-intercept, which is a point. So you got to write your answer as a point. What's the x-intercept here? It's going to be -20/3, comma 0. Or you could have put -6 2/3, comma 0. Same thing. Next, we plot that on our graph. So we put a point right there. That's called your x-intercept. To find the y-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for x and solve for y. So we take our original equation, we're going to plug in 0 for x. So what's 3 times 0? That's going to be 0. What's 0 minus 5y? That's -5y. And how do I get y by itself here? Well, it's -5 times y. So I divide both sides by -5 to cancel that out. And I get y is equal to +4. Now again, don't write your answer like this. This is the equation of a horizontal line. We want a point. We want the y-intercept. So we write our answer 0, comma, and then whatever our y value is here. 4. That's going to be our y-intercept. So we go to 4 on the y-axis right here, and we put a point. That is your y-intercept. We draw a line through our two intercepts, and that is the graph of your equation right here. Example 2 says graph the following equation. So we have x is equal to 5. We were just talking about how if it's x equals a number, that's the equation of a vertical line. So what I'm going to do on my graph, I'm going to go over to x is equal to 5. That would be right here. And now, that's the equation of a vertical line. This vertical line right here is everywhere where x is equal to 5. If I picked any point on this line, it would have an x coordinate of 5. 5, 1, 5, 2, 5, 3, 5, 4. That's everywhere where x is equal to 5. Part B, we have y is equal to -2. So this is the equation of a horizontal line. So I go over to my y-axis, I go down to -2, and I want a horizontal line. So at y is equal to -2, this is going to be a horizontal line representing every point that has a y-coordinate of -2. This is 1, -2, 2, -2, 3, -2. Every point on this line has a y-coordinate of -2. That's why this is the graph of that equation.
What did the members of the fellowship call Frodo? The ringleader! You try.
Okay, so again, here, I have the equation of a horizontal line at y is equal to 7. On the y-axis, I go up to 7. I'm going to draw a horizontal line because I want all the points that have a y-coordinate of 7. 0, 7, 1, 7, 2, 7, 3, 7. All points on this line have a y-coordinate of 7. Just like here, x is equal to -5. On the x-axis, I want to go over to -5. I want to put a vertical line because I want all the points that have a x-coordinate of -5. -5, 0, -5, 1, -5, 2, -5, 3. Every point on this line has a x-coordinate of -5. That's why this is the graph of that equation. Now example 3 says write each equation in standard form. So here we have y equals 2x plus 5. We have y equals mx plus b. This is slope-intercept form where it gives you the slope 2 and the y-intercept of 5. To get it into standard form, which is ax plus by equals c, I need to move this x term to the other side of the equation. So what I'm going to do to get this positive 2x to the other side of the equation, I'm going to do the opposite, the inverse. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. Now these are going to cancel each other out. And over here, you could write y minus 2x, but what I want it in standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. So I'm going to put the x term first and then write -2x plus y equals 5. Now this is basically looking like standard form, right? ax plus by, where b is 1, is equal to c, which is 5. But if you recall, I want my a value to be positive. So I just have to multiply everything in this equation by -1. So here I'm going to distribute this -1 to the -2x, give me positive 2x. That's why I did it. -1 times this y is going to be -y, and then -1 times 5 gives me -5. Now I have my standard form of this equation up here, where my a value is 2, my b value is -1, and my c value is -5. Here, I now have an equation in point slope form, right? Y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times the quantity x minus x sub 1, where our m, our slope, is -1/2, our x sub 1 is going to be -10, and our y sub 1 is going to be 2. But I want this to be in standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. So what I want to do first, I'm going to convert it into slope-intercept form, and then from there, I can change it into standard form. So how do I get it into slope-intercept form first? Well, that's y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to first distribute this -1/2. So negative 1/2 times x is going to give me negative 1/2 x. Negative 1/2 times 10, if you think about 10 as a fraction, 10 over 1. I multiply the numerators together, denominators together. I get 10 times 1 is 10, and 2 times 1 gives me 2. And since 1's negative, 1's positive, it's going to be negative 10 over 2. Now, can I simplify this? Yeah, what's 10 divided by 2? That's just 5. So again, I want to put it into y equals mx plus b first. So I'm going to add this 2 to the other side, get my y by itself. That way these cancel out, and I get y is equal to negative 1/2 x minus 3. Now I have my slope-intercept form here. Y equals negative 1/2 x minus 3, where m, my slope, is negative 1/2, and my b, my y-intercept, is negative 3. But that's not what I want. I want it in standard form, which is ax plus by equals c. So how do I do that? Well, first, in standard form, we do not have fractions, okay? A, b, and c are integers. So what I need to do is I need to get rid of this fraction. How do I get rid of this fraction? Well, remember, to get rid of a fraction, I multiply everything by the least common denominator. And since there's only one denominator here, I just multiply everything by that. 2. What's 2 times y? That's 2. What's 2 times negative 1/2? Remember, 2 is the same as 2 over 1, so I multiply the numerators together, denominators together, so I get negative 2 over 2. And then 2 times negative 3 is going to give me negative 6. And negative 2 over 2 simplifies to negative 1. Getting close. Now I need ax plus by equals c. So this x term has to go to the other side. Since it's negative x, to get it to the other side, I do the opposite, the inverse. I add x to both sides. That way these cancel out. And remember, you could write 2y plus x, but I want it in standard form, which means the x has to go first. So I'm going to go x plus 2y. That way it's in standard form, where my a is going to be 1, my b is going to be 2, and my c is going to be negative 6.
What do you call an elf who can't find his toy? Lego lost! You try.
Here you can see that it's in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, where my slope is 3/4 and my b, my y-intercept, is 1/2. But that's not what I want. I want it in standard form, ax plus by equals c. Well, remember, once it's in slope-intercept form, I need to get rid of fractions, which means I need to multiply everything by the least common denominator. Now, what's the least common denominator between 2 and 4? Well, I can multiply 2 to get it to be 4, right? If I multiply 2 by 2, I get 4. So 4 is going to be the least common multiple, the least common denominator. So I multiply everything by the least common denominator, 4. That way, 4 times y gives me 4y. 4, I then distribute to the 3/4 and to the negative 1/2. And I end up getting, when I multiply 4 times 3/4, remember 4 is the same thing as 4 over 1. So I multiply 4 times 3, I get 12. 1 times 4 gives me 4. Over here, 4 times 1 gives me 4, and 1 times 2 gives me 2. Now I can simplify these fractions. What's 12 over 4? That's 3. And what's 4 over 2? That's 2. So you see why I multiply by the least common denominator, because it gets rid of all the fractions. Now I have integers. Sweet! So I need to get ax plus by equals c. So how do I get this over to the other side? I do the opposite, the inverse. Since it's positive 3x, I subtract 3x from both sides. That way these cancel out, and I get negative 3x plus 4y equals negative 2. Again, I wrote the negative 3x first because I want it to be in the form ax plus by equals c. Some teachers care about this, some don't. I do. I need you to make this negative. How do I do that? I multiply everything in the equation by negative 1. So I just basically change the sign of every term. So this becomes positive 3x, this becomes negative 4y, and this becomes positive 2. Now I have ax plus by equals c, where a is 3, b is negative 4, and c is 2. Here, I have point slope form. I need this to be in standard form, ax plus by equals c. So from point slope form, I need to first convert it to slope intercept. How do I do that? Well, that's y equals mx plus b. So let's first distribute this negative 2. I'm going to distribute the negative 2 to the x and get negative 2x, and then distribute the negative 2 to the 7 and get negative 14. Now I need to get y by itself, so I'm going to subtract this 6 to the other side. That way y is by itself when these cancel out, and negative 14 minus 6 is going to make it more negative. It's the same thing as negative 14 plus negative 6, which is negative 20. Now, last but not least, I need it to be ax plus by equals c. So this x term has to go to this side. Since it's negative 2x, I do the opposite, the inverse to move it. I add 2x to both sides. That way these cancel out. I write the 2x in front of the y, so it's in the correct form. And I have 2x plus y equal to negative 20. Now again, this is in the form ax plus by equals c, where a is 2, b is going to be a 1, and then c is equal to negative 20. Now example 4 says write the equation of the line passing through the given points in point slope, slope intercept, and standard form. And it gives you 2 points, and that's it. Now this question comes up all the time. It doesn't always ask you to find each form. What it does is it asks you to find one specific form. But here I'm going to show you that if you have 2 points, you can figure out slope intercept, point slope, or standard form. You can find out all of them just from 2 points. So here's what we do. Anytime you're given 2 points, the first form that you want to find is point slope form. Every single time. If you're given 2 points, you find point slope form first. Why is that? Because it's the easiest form to get. What do you need? You need a point and you need the slope. Since it gives you 2 points, you can easily pick a point. Doesn't matter which one, so I'm going to pick this one, sure. And then my slope. If you recall the slope formula, m is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Here, I have my x sub 1 and my y sub 1. That would make this x sub 2 and y sub 2. Now what I can do is plug those into their corresponding spots in the slope formula. 2 goes in for y sub 2, negative 1 goes in for y sub 1. Negative 1 goes in for x sub 2, 0 goes in for x sub 1. Now we simplify what's 2 minus negative 1. That's the same thing as 2 plus 1, so that's going to be 3 on top, and then negative 1 minus 0 on the bottom is going to give you negative 1. What's 3 divided by negative 1? That's negative 3. So I now have a point and a slope, so I can plug it into point slope form, which is y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times the quantity x minus x sub 1. In for x sub 1, I'm going to plug in 0. Negative 1, I'm going to put in for y sub 1. Negative 3 goes in for m. Now, if you recall, when I plug in negative 1 for my y sub 1, that's the same thing as y minus negative 1, which becomes y plus 1. Over here, x minus 0 is the same thing as x, so this just becomes x in the parentheses, and what's negative 3 times x? That's just negative 3x. So this would be the point slope form of my equation. From here, you go from point slope to slope intercept next. So let's go to slope intercept form. What's slope intercept form? That's y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to take this guy right here, and I'm going to convert it into slope intercept form, y equals mx plus b, which means I need to get the y by itself on the left side of the equation, which means I have to move this plus 1 to the other side. How do I do that? I do the opposite, the inverse. I subtract 1 from both sides. That way these cancel out. What's negative 3x minus 1? Well, I can't subtract these, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write negative 3x minus 1. Now I have slope intercept form, y equals mx plus b, where m is going to be negative 3 and b, my y-intercept, is going to be negative 1. From here, I can put it into standard form, ax plus by equals c. So I'm going to take what I got for slope intercept form, and how do I get ax plus by equals c? Well, this negative 3x term has to go to the other side. Since it's negative 3x, I do the opposite, the inverse. I add 3x to both sides. That way these cancel each other out. And over here, instead of writing y plus 3x, I'm going to write the 3x first and then the y. So I'm going to go 3x plus y is equal to negative 1. Now this is in the form ax plus by equals c, where a is going to be 3, b is going to be 1, and c is going to be negative 1.
Did anyone notice I was holding a broom this whole time? You try!
Okay, again, anytime it gives you 2 points and asks you to write the equation, you're going to start by doing point slope form first, where you need a point and a slope. What's a point? You can pick either one. Doesn't matter. Let's pick this one just because it's here. So that's our x sub 1, and that's our y sub 1. So that's our point. What about our slope? If you recall the slope formula, m is equal to y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. So I have an x sub 1 and a y sub 1. That would make this x sub 2 and y sub 2. So I'm going to plug in negative 1 for y sub 2, plug in negative 3 for y sub 1. I'm going to plug in 2 for x sub 2 and negative 1 for x sub 1. Now we simplify. What's negative 1 minus negative 3? That's the same thing as negative 1 plus 3, which is going to be positive 2. In our denominator, 2 minus negative 1, same thing as 2 plus 1, which is going to be 3. So we have our slope, 2/3. Now we have a point and a slope, so let's plug it into point slope form. Y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times the quantity x minus x sub 1. Negative 1, we're going to plug in for x sub 1. Negative 3, we're going to plug in for y sub 1. And 2/3, we plug in for our m. Now can we simplify this at all? Well, yeah. Y minus negative 3 is the same thing as y plus 3. And then x minus negative 1 is the same thing as x plus 1. Now I have point slope form. So from here, I can move to slope intercept form. So I'm going to take this guy right here and convert it into slope intercept form. I need it to be y equals mx plus b. I need to distribute this 2/3. I'm going to distribute it to the x and to the 1. What's 2/3 times x? That's 2/3 x. What's 2/3 times 1? That's 2/3. Remember, in slope intercept form, I need to get y by itself. So this plus 3 has to go. How do I get that to the other side? Well, I'm going to, since it's plus 3, I do the opposite, the inverse. I subtract 3 from both sides. That way these cancel each other out, and I get get y is equal to 2/3 x and then 2/3 minus 3. Well, that's the same thing as 2/3 minus 9/3, right? Because 3 is the same thing as 3 over 1. And to subtract them, they need a common denominator. So I multiply 3 over 1 by 3 in my numerator and denominator, and I get negative 9/3. Now I can subtract these two. What's 2 minus 9? That's going to be negative 7. My denominator stays the same, so slope-intercept form is y equals 2/3 x minus 7/3. Now, from here, I have my slope-intercept form. I need to go to standard form. So I'm going to take this guy that I just got, and I'm first going to get rid of the fractions. Remember, standard form doesn't have fractions or decimals. So what I do is I multiply everything by the least common denominator. Since there's only one denominator, 3, I'm going to multiply everything by 3. That way I get rid of the fractions. So 3 times y gives me 3y. Now over here, I'm going to distribute this 3 to the 2/3 x and to the negative 7/3. Now, 3 is the same thing as 3 over 1. So when I multiply 3 over 1 times 2/3, I multiply the numerators together and denominators together. So 3 times 2 gives you 6. 1 times 3 gives you 3. Over here, 3 over 1 times 7 over 3. I multiply the numerators together, denominators together, and I get 21 over 3. Now I can simplify what's 6 divided by 3. That's 2. What's 21 divided by 3? That's 7. Now I have successfully got rid of all the fractions. So I need to get it in the form ax plus by equals c. So this x term has to go in the front. Since it's positive 2x, how do I move it to the other side? Well, I subtract 2x from both sides. That way these cancel each other out. And over here, I'm going to write the negative 2x first, and then plus 3y is equal to negative 7. That way it's in the form ax plus by equals c. Now, last but not least, I need my a term to be positive. So I'm going to multiply everything in the equation by negative 1. When I do that, I just change the sign of each term. This becomes positive 2x, this becomes negative 3y, and this becomes positive 7. And you're done. Now, a word problem says, in a video game, you earn 5 points for every jewel you find. You earn 2 points for each star you find. Write and graph an equation that represents the numbers of jewels and stars you must find to earn 250 points. What are 3 combinations of jewels and stars you can find that will earn you 250 points? So step 1, in a word problem. We're not scared. We can do this. Step 2, what is it asking? It's asking what are 3 combinations of jewels and stars you can find that will earn you 250 points. Step 3, we're going to define our variables. So what are our variables here? Well, it says you can earn 5 points for every jewel you find. So 5 points times every jewel you find. That means J, we'll say, is the number of jewels you find. And then it says you can earn 2 points for each star that you find. So that would be, I don't know, S for the number of stars. Sure. Next, we're going to write our equation. Is there anything that these can total? Well, yeah, 250. So it's going to be equal to 250 points. So what's going to be equal to 250 points? Well, it says 5 points times every jewel. So 5 times J plus 2 times every star. So 2 times S. So 5J plus 2S has to equal 250. We'll say J is going to be our independent variable, X. S is going to be our dependent variable, Y. Now we need to find the X and the Y intercepts, or the J and the S intercepts in this case. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to plug in 0 for S and solve for J first to find the J intercept. So we plug in 0 for S and solve for J. What's 2 times 0? That's 0. What's 5J plus 0? That's 5J. And then to get J by itself, I divide both sides by 5. That way these cancel out. I get J is equal to 50. That means on your X-axis or your J-axis, we're going to have a point at 50, 0. To find the Y-intercept or S-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for J and solve for S. So what is 5 times 0? That's 0. What's 0 plus 2S? That's just 2S. And then how do I get S by itself? I divide both sides by 2, and that gives me S is equal to 125, which means on my Y-axis or my S-axis, I'm going to put a point at 0, 125. Now let's graph. So here's our graph. We said J, the number of jewels, is going to be your independent variable, and then your dependent variable is S, the number of stars that you found. So what I do then is I plot each of these points. So 50, 0, I'm going to put a point at 50, 0. That gives me my J-intercept or X-intercept. And then my S-intercept or Y-intercept is going to be at 0, 125. So 0, 125, that's going to be about right here. Now what I do is I graph a line going through those 2 points. That gives me the graph of this equation right here. So now it's going to ask 3 combinations of jewels and stars that will get you 250 points. Well, we just found our intercepts, and these intercepts are actually places that give you those points. If I plug in 50 for J and 0 for S, it gives me 250. So this is actually a solution to our problem. Same thing here. If I plug in 0 for J and 125 for S, it gives me 250. Now, it's not a coincidence that these are both solutions to your problems. This line that we graphed is the solution graph. Any point on this line is a solution to this equation. So we pick any point on this line and it'll give us a combination of joules and stars that will give you 250 points. The tough part is finding a place that it goes through perfectly. So how about right here? So at this point, we have 30 joules and 50 stars. Would that work? Well, if I plug in 30 for J and 50 for S, what's 5 times 30? That's 150. What's 2 times 50? That's 100. So what's 150 plus 100? That's 250. Yeah. So this works as well. So 30 joules and 50 stars would also be another solution. And if you wanted more, you just find another point on this line and you're done.